Hi, everyone. It's Elizabeth Wood, and I'm really excited today. It's going to be a very special interview today. I have with me David Maria, the living embodiment of the Eden template. He's a mystic, he's a mystical dreamer, and he's a very precious soul, and I'm very glad that he's my friend right now. And so thank you so much, David, for being with me today. I deeply appreciate that. And I'm so glad we get to talk. And welcome to our little show.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's wonderful to be here. And I also deeply appreciate your friendship. It is an absolute joy to be friends with you.
Oh, it's been really fun and very deeply meaningful to me. And the first time I met you, someone told me you should call this guy. He's got something really special. So I called you and we got on the phone, and here's something rare that happens. Every once in a while, maybe only 2 times in my life have I met someone who can see really well. And when seers get together, it's pretty funny because seers can see that you can see. So here we're on the phone, and it was one of the most interesting conversations I've ever had because we didn't really talk that much. We were just kind of sitting together, seeing, and to be seen, to be open and be willing to be seen, to be able to see someone else who also has no resistance at all. It was just very magical. and so I thank you for that, because it's rare for me to meet other seers who can see as well. So that leads me into the other gifts that you've brought to the table, of which some of them I've been able to experience. And part of it, I think, is that right now you are being called to get your work out into the world in a new way. And that's why we ended up orbiting together at this time. But there's this energy that I'm noticing about the planet and the shattering that's going on. So when you, in particular, zoom out and look at the big picture, what is it that you're noticing right now from that vantage point of being a template of consciousness, the Eden template, and embodying it, being that? What is the vantage point? What is your facet that you're seeing about Earth and humans at the moment? What shows up for you?
We're in an absolutely necessary cycle where the old way of doing things, which is completely unsustainable, everybody knows it. Even people that are entrenched into it know that it's completely unsustainable. It's being gradually cracked. It's being broken into smaller and smaller pieces. Everything is coming to the surface for everybody to see. And that means multitudinous forms of complete dysfunctionality. And that's how we've been operating. That's how we've been living. That's the momentum, if you will, that the collective has been running on. And it's surfacing so that everybody can see it. And in that seeing, come to some kind of conclusion about, what do you want? What is it that you want? What kind of life do you want to live? And be able to make choices that will bring about change. So it's not here yet, but we're going to see almost complete and total reorganizations in terms of financial structures, medical structures, the way that businesses are conducted. You know, there's so much artificial inequity in the financial system that it's built into it. There's so much racial inequity built into the system. It was designed that way, and it cannot and will not be allowed to survive. It just won't. It can't. And yet the requirement, if you will, for those changes to really come forth is for us as people to make those changes internally. It always happens inside. This is all an inside job. So if the world at large says no, we like this, we want to stay just like this, then it's going to stay like that. And at the same time, we know that when we're doing our work, when we're working on ourselves, we're in the process of self-realization. I don't like the word awakening, because how do you awaken to what you already are and you've always been? It's just a process of remembering. And as we remember who we are, that we are the divine self, we are the God self itself, then everything around us changes. And when enough people do that, which is it's more rare and precious than I used to think it was. I used to feel that there was a lot of people, like millions, that were on the planet that were doing this work. But it doesn't take that many. It doesn't take that many to make a major shift. So what is the expression that the Chinese have, that with great opportunity, that there's also, as you come up on a pivotal point of critical mass, there's both danger and opportunity, because we don't know how it's gonna flip. We have no idea how it's gonna shift, and it's all based on us. It's all based on me. It's all based on you. It's all based on all of you out there that are watching this now. It's your consciousness that will make a shift, if a shift happens.
I love that, first off, that it makes it very clear that individuals have so much more light, and I don't want to say power, because power is light. Light is power. That they have so much more light than they realize, and that in the remembering of who they are, that it's big, massive waves of change that come through that acknowledgement of the true God self within. And that that's something I like to literally clock. Like, I'm a scientist, so I'm interested in measuring this stuff if possible. But I've had to devise all sorts of ways to use the scientific method with mysticism to see if I can watch shifts occur. And I've got my perfect situation having a family. So I have this 3D life I got a farm and a career and a family and all these things that ancient mystics didn't have. And every time I make an inner shift, I can instantly see it occur in the people around me, because I'm watching that, I'm watching for it. And now there's no doubt, so I don't have to watch anymore. There's no doubt that it's occurring. And this shattering, I think, in mysticism, although it feels horrible for ego and identity to shatter, for systems to shatter, it feels bad at first, but what's on the other side of it is formlessness, it's expansiveness, it's oneness. And for you, having gone through plenty of shatterings yourself, many, many hundreds, thousands of shatterings, what would you say to people right now who are really beginning to remember? You've remembered for a long time, but there's all these folks who are just beginning to remember, and they feel like it's too late. They feel like it's too late. And I don't think it is.
No, never.
What would you say to them?
I'm going to share an example. Something happened to me back in '96, and I lost everything. And I do mean I lost everything. I was working as a telemarketer, selling magazine subscriptions, earning $7 an hour. And that was enough, that made me enough money to make a car payment and buy food and live at my mother's house. And one day I found myself on a weekend driving through a neighborhood of multi-million-dollar homes. And I saw a sign said it was open house, and my inner guidance was go in, and I'm going, don't be silly, I'm not going to go in. I can't even afford $250 car payment. I'm not going to look at $1 million home. And the guidance was insistence, and I went in. And we were in the garage, and the salesman was showing me, and there was this broken statue of Kuan Yin. And you may not be able to see it, but the back is all cracked. There's big, huge cracks through it and everything else. And I asked him about it, and he said, "Oh, God, do you know what that is? Please just take it. It's horrible here in the garage. I keep asking them to clean it up, and they don't. So please take it." So I did, with the intention of getting some glue and putting all the pieces back together. Her head was broken off. All of the flowers were broken off. And I went to glue everything back together, and she came and said no. And over the years, it was 12 years before I was, quote unquote, allowed to put all of the pieces back together. Every time she said no, and finally I said, "Why?" And she said, "You know, I have been waiting a while for you to ask this question." And the answer is because no matter how broken you think you are, you're not. Nobody is broken. Nobody is broken. Everybody is whole. We always have been. Your stories about yourself may be broken. Your stories about your life may be broken. Your stories about what you believe or what you think is true may be broken, but not you. You are an eternal soul. You are the phenomenal magnificence of the God Self itself. You always have been. There has never been a single moment that anybody on this planet or anywhere else has ever been separate. Not a single moment. So no matter how broken you think you might be, you're not.
Mm. What a beautiful gift. Thank you. I really deeply appreciate that. I think that message is going to really touch a lot of people's hearts. And they need to hear that. You are not broken.
No, no.
So I see too this crisis opportunity, chaos opportunity, as the Chinese love to point out. And what's really fascinating is all the shatterings happening, but simultaneously all these new things are growing and being created out of it, almost like a whole other set of spinning that's coming out of the shattering. And as we get closer towards remembrance, that happens personally for others, so that you end up finding, wow, all these things all these projects, for example, that I've been wanting to do for so long, or all the guidance I've been getting to write this thing or to create this other thing or network, or a lot of the clients I work with are noticing that there's more and more room to be able to do this. And they've been frustrated because they're all very aware that one of the greatest blocks they have is that concept that they are broken, which we would call trauma. So trauma is the number one thing I've seen that really blocks people from being able to realize that remembrance. And you work really intimately with people on this issue of trauma. Could you talk a little bit about how trauma has played a role in your own remembering, and how you're noticing people working with trauma now, and how you work with people with trauma?
So my childhood was one like a quadfecta, if you will, of violent physical abuse, where I was almost killed at 2 years old. Violent sexual abuse, violent emotional abuse, and violent mental abuse. It settled down in my teenage years in terms of it wasn't quite so there wasn't the violent physicalness, but the entire familial line that I came through, every single one of the men, both on my on my side, my grandfather, my father, my uncles, my stepfather, they were all pedophiles. They all raped their children. And I don't mention that in terms of generating sympathy, but we all choose the circumstances of our birth before we come here, whatever it is. And I don't care how horrific it looks, it's a choice that we make. I came deliberately to step into that and be able to clear that. And it's taken quite a while. For most of my life, if not close to the entirety of it, it was never safe to be in the body, because the body, if I was present in the body, that meant that abuse of some form was coming, no matter what. So I literally was never in the body. And I'm 74 years old now, and this last January I celebrated the very first birthday that I've ever celebrated in the physical body. It was really cool. And that's probably one of the single biggest things that trauma does for us, is that anytime we have an experience that is traumatizing, especially if there's a large emotional charge that goes with it, we fracture off. It just literally, we splinter, and we no longer can feel it. It's a perfectly understandable defense mechanism to not have to relive that pain over and over and over. Nonetheless, if you cannot feel it, you cannot heal it. And so a lot of the one-on-one work that I do is helping people get into their bodies, fully get into their bodies. And trust me, the irony of me encouraging somebody to get in their body is not lost on me, because I wasn't in my body for many decades. Nonetheless, it is one of the primary things that I do. And because I have, and I would say a lot through grace, been allowed to clear all of this in my own field, when somebody works with me, then I bring a stability that is needed to be able to activate whatever's ready to come up and be felt. And whatever it is, it does not matter what the story is. It could be abuse of any kind. It could be murder. It could be any of the horrific things that have happened, that we have all done to each other on the planet. It could be you doing it. It could be somebody doing it to you. I really don't care. It literally does not matter. All that matters is what is the feeling that is arising in your body. And if you can stay present with it and allow it to come up and feel it to its core, all the way to the bottom, until there is literally nothing left to feel. And that may mean crying or screaming or throwing stuff or getting out of bataka and beating things or whatever it might be. When you get to that point, it just dissolves like the literal energetic phantom that it is or was. It's just a distorted energy. And once you feel it and welcome it back in, and not attempt to no, I can't feel that, it has to stay out. Once you let it back in and feel it, it dissolves. It not only dissolves, it's gone. It does not return. There may be a whisper, like a phantom thought of, but no, it's just a whisper. The energy of it is gone. And the nice part is that I don't do this for people. I'm just a guide. The people that I'm working with, they do this work themselves.
Yes, and I love this, especially what you do, because you found through your own trauma healing, you found this path, and neither of us have known each other until now, and I found that path too, in the same exact way on my own, and so have other people. And then we're merging, we're finding each other, we're finding this path that is about embodiment, is about following the emotional body's cues. because the emotional body knows this stuff. It's the one resisting letting go of the density of the charge of the trauma. And it's so fabulous. And I agree. No one can be, it can't be done for anyone. There can be people who can guide you in non-judgment and compassion to guide you through it to the very bottom so you can unplug it and let it drain out and be able to feel the dissolving occur. And then that leads to different kinds of shattering and dissolving of ego and self and separation. But I love that through this dark lifetime, you found your way out through the bottom of the rabbit hole, like the bottom of the rabbit hole, finding your way out into this light and then leading people, being a leader of that. I also relate in that just this June, I got into my body. So even though I've been doing the same thing, everybody get into your body. It's full body enlightenment. That's the name of the game. Work on the trauma that I too haven't been in my body until now. But that's the cool part about 2020. It's the cool part about this year is that we get this opportunity for many of us who are aware of what it's going to take, getting the gift, the grace to be able to be in the body for the first time. It's wonderful. I'm getting access to so much more trauma than I ever had to be able to work with, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited about working with my own trauma now, and that's the attitude shift that happens when you do this long enough. With that in mind, what does it take to get into your body, and what else is coming up for you?
One of the as you do this work, initially it may be difficult, it may be scary, but one of the very first things that you learn is that yes, there's an energy that's occurring here, some kind of traumatic circumstances is arising that I haven't wanted to feel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then you begin to realize that once that clears, you have now created this a space, and what comes in to fill that space is this amazingly beautiful light. You might phrase it as grace. It's just it's an energy of pure love that comes in and just fills you. And the more you do that, the less resistance you have to whatever it is that arises, no matter how difficult it is, because you know that's just a temporary step on a path, and the other side of it is going to be this more realization of who you really are is going to present itself to you. And so it does become easier and easier. No illusions, this is not an easy path to walk, because the line gets really fine. And when you think the line has gotten really, really narrow and you can't, it's like a knife edge, then it becomes the size of an atom. Then it becomes the size of an electron. And then the electron is just a coarse system of measurement, because the line becomes incredibly fine that we hold. So a lot of and I would like to talk a little bit about the Eden template. So the main purpose of the Eden template is alignment. It begins the process of aligning your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies. And as they come into alignment, just naturally more light comes into you, begins to fill you. And as that happens, it begins to naturally and organically bring any distortions up to the surface, whatever they might be. There's no label to put on it. It could literally be anything. But whatever is going on inside of you that is a distortion will begin to surface to clear. And as that happens, those alignments become finer and finer and finer and finer. And you connect deeper and deeper and remember who you are. Mm. It may be a quick process. Traditionally or historically, it's not a quick process. Mental institutions around the world are filled with absolute geniuses that just pushed too fast, too quick, and remembered too fast, and their nervous systems were not prepared. And it fried some of their circuitry.
Yep. Good point.
So I always encourage people to just be easy with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself the grace that you know that you would extend to anybody that was in pain and suffering. And if the inner voice that you're using, this is a quote from Matt Kahn, and I absolutely love it. If the voice that you're using to talk to yourself is harsher than the voice that you would use to speak to a child who's in pain, then give yourself a break. Be easy with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Be tender.
I feel that tenderness in you, but it leads to the nature of this template. The tenderness is like the doorway inviting people to this template. The energy I see, perceive, feel about the template itself, and because others who probably haven't connected to it yet, they're going to wonder, what is this about? And they're not trusting their own perception necessarily. But I want to say that the experience of it that I've had with it is that there's this very specific quality of light to it. And I love that the idea of it is alignment, and just like a different lenses coming together, and then being able to really see the light come through the self. But it connects you then to all these other layers. It connects all these light bodies to the Merkaba, and the Merkaba to the source field, and there's a depth to it too. And the quality of light I see is actually the one I'm wearing. I wore this on purpose because it's this light that I see, this blue. Yeah. And this blue light is so peaceful, but it's really deep, and it reminds me of the ocean. And many people believe and know to be true that DNA and life partially came through water. That water is required for DNA to exist. And that the embodiment process to be in the body is also to connect to the power of the DNA, which has immense amount of light in it. And the alignment of the DNA with this alignment of self is showing up to me, all of which has been continuing to be revealed ever since I was connecting to this template myself. And it's a personal experience. And then it leads you to a universal one. This is just what I'm perceiving. Do you have any things coming up around that perception, or does it trigger anything you'd like to share?
So to talk about the template, I need to digress just a little bit to
Mm-hmm.
give a little bit of historical perspective. So I was blessed. There's no question about it. With grace, in that during almost all of 2018, I became obsessed with Africa, studying it, looking at it, what's going on, and but not from a political standpoint, from an energetic and mystical perspective. And around the beginning of December, I was called to go to Africa in dreams. 3 African kings came to me and invited me to come to be with them, invited me to study. And through a multitudinous series of what I can only call miracles, because I did not have the resources to do a trip like this. A last minute ticket to Kenya was $2,300. And a friend called and said, "You have to be there. I want to buy your plane and more miracles, more miracles, and more miracles, because it was a calling. There was no, and it wasn't just me, it was two other people. It was Beth Curia and Teresa Lutnager. And they knew we were coming. They had invited us. They'd had in-depth telepathic communications about what was going on. The Hopi knew that we were going. They had information about it. We arrived at the annual prayer vigil that circumambulates around Mount Kenya in a counterclockwise motion. And when we arrived there, we were the only white people, and white people had never been there. No white person has ever come here. This is a really big to-do in Kenya. It's a very ancient ritual. This is within the context of Kenyan spirituality, the Kituyu Peak tribe. There are 12 seers or shamans. There have always been 12, and throughout all of the generations. And to put a really historical perspective on this, at the beginning of the patriarchy, when Atlantis fell, then one of the things that was done was that the really huge master crystal that was there, that had the potential to create and destroy, was looking to be weaponized, and it was sealed. And by sealed, I mean it was pushed off dimension, not in 3D anymore. It was sealed to protect it, so that it would not, no one would have access to it. And the whole group of people that did the sealing put into their DNA the keys to be able to unlock those seals. So a lot of people were called to go to Kenya, to go to Africa. It just so happened that the three of us were the ones that answered the call. There could have been others. And all we really had to do was walk on the land. And the keys embedded in the DNA went into the soil, and it unlocked the crystal. And it dimensionally shifted back here. And when it did, and if you look at my website, you'll see it, because that's a perfect representation of what it looked like. It started sending out these huge wave pulses, at wave after wave after wave of pure creation energy. And as those waves flowed out, you could see the land spring to life behind them, and springing into new life with each wave. So I was recognized by the Kituyu shaman, by the seers. I was accepted. I was told that the reason it had to be this way is because they told, before we arrived there, they told the gathered crowd who we were and that we were coming. And they told them who we were. So that was their way of, this is my interpretation, that was their way of saying, if anybody ever tells you that you just studied a bunch of books on Africa and African traditions and oral histories, et cetera, and figured this out, and now you're just another colonizer, if you will, of our spirituality. This was their way of saying, no, we invited him, we recognize him, we know who he is, he's one of us. I claim for myself that I am the 13th seer. I cannot confirm that they all would agree with that, the other 12. So while I was there, I had a dream that the current 12 seers were all standing around me with their arms on my shoulder, and behind them were the 12 seers from the previous generation, and behind them and behind them and behind them and behind them. When I shared that dream with Samuel Kamitha, who was the seer that I met with, he said, "You've been accepted." And I said, "No, I'm the 13th. I cannot tell you that they agree with this, but I know that I am the 13th. And the 13th in every tradition is one that breaks up, begins to make little cracks so that more light can come in. It's like in a lot of cases we spend our lives praying and praying and praying for something to happen, and all of a sudden the shell of the shell of the egg cracks just a little bit, and we go, whoops, you know. So it's just doing those little crackings. So while I was there, the template came. It came in a transmission and then unpacked. It came like most transmissions do. It comes in just a fraction of a second, and then it slowly unpacks, and you understand the totality of it. So the very essence of the template is that we are eternal beings, and every time that we have died unconsciously, doesn't matter how much at peace we are with the process, every time we have died and not remembered who we are, the body has an automatic fear response, because it thinks this is it. It's now just darkness, and I'll be worm food. And so if you imagine yourself having lived innumerable lives, every time that happens, it creates a little smoky, this is how I see it, is a little smoky thread around the source connection at the root of your spine. And if you imagine that you've lived millions of times, it creates like a really tight ball of yarn that chokes off the life force at the base of your spine. What the Eden template does is that opens that circuit, and those threads just dissolve, and the energy begins moving up through your central column. It creates a stable, vertical, horizontal toroidal field. And then you do an inner process to awaken and remember the perfection of what your physical body actually is. And when that is complete, it opens and creates a stable horizontal toroidal field out of your heart field. And awakening the light source at the base of your spine is a direct connection to source. So what it does is it reconnects you directly to who you've always been. And that life force energy begins to flow through you as you. And the more it integrates, the more you become it. And this is not about me. This has absolutely nothing to do with me. I just happen to be the living embodiment of it. There's no specialness about that at all, because really and truly, once it embodies in you, it's you.
I want people to know how special this is. And I can only really do that by explaining how I ended up in the situation and what my experience is. Before I heard about you and called you, and you don't know this, before I heard about you and called you, I kept having visions, and so this can help people who see things and who don't. But as a seer, you get used to being very willing and surrendering to and obeying things that show up. Yeah, you got to follow it. But you'll never get the full picture right away. You get little glimpses, kind of like I call it being on a road of a million mirrors. And each mirror is giving you a little reflection of a bigger picture. And sometimes that reflection will unfold years later. Sometimes the reflection will happen the next day, the wholeness of it, whatever little piece you were given. So about a month before we met, I kept having this vision of the base of my spine, and that there was this little doorway, but it was really dark, and it had all these cobwebs and stuff. And I thought, that's a problem. There should be light going through there. And then my sister calls me, and she has had spinal surgery. And during the spinal surgery, the nerves in the base of her spine were cut out. so that the very base of her spine is empty. And that was not a normal part of the procedure. And she didn't understand why that happened. And neither did any of the doctors later. No one understood why that doctor did all of this to her tailbone, basically. And then she had a baby years later, even though she was told she couldn't have children. She did. She has 3. She had a baby years later, and it broke the whole base of her spine off, and it resealed it backwards. So it healed backwards. And so she's been complaining about all this pain and problems in her pelvis because of that, because of the surgery, because of a lot of different issues. So I've been helping her do emotional processing around this. And I said, I realize that you're totally disconnected from the base of your spine, that this base piece is very important, and that it's partially causing the numbness in your legs and all of these things, but you can heal this. You are not relegated to being separate from this part of your body forever. You can become one with it. You can heal this. And she'd say, well, I don't really get it. I don't really know how. And I said, well, you got to start with emotions first. But I didn't really know how either. I just knew you got to work with your emotions. So then I end up in a session with this lady, and I'm walking her through, and I got drawn to the base of her spine. And I said, let's start there, because in me, there's a cavernous dark hole there. And I see it in you too. What if we go into it? Let's walk into the dark hole. And we did, and it turned into the most magnificent cave of amethyst. It was so beautiful for her. It was specific to her. And we moved through this, and we found ourselves walking up through this beautiful cavern of the spine, all the way up and out. And it transformed her body. I'm not saying I activated an Eden template or anything like that. But then, trying to work with my own, just trying to lighten it up, trying to shine some light in that dark hole there. I was kind of frustrated about it because it's there, and I'm seeing it, and I'm trying to work with it. And then I meet you. And so I got to go through this activation, and it took me a while to get to it because it would happen and I'd miss it, or I'd be something on my calendar would happen. I got to do the 8/8 activation, right? So on Lionsgate. And this answered all my questions. I realized, well, this was all coming. This is the bigger picture. This was the bigger picture that I was missing. I was trying to understand it, trying to discover it, noticing it in others, noticing it in myself especially. And when the activation began, it all made sense. Oh my gosh, we've been missing out on this core part of our embodiment. Everyone always talks about the root and blah, 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 but they don't ever talk about the base of your spine as being so incredibly important to our existence. And that makes so much sense in so many ways. But I want to thank you and explain to people, this is important. This is a part of the body that is very key to being human. The human is a bipedal, beautiful being, unique in the universe. And this bipedalism is very powerful for consciousness. But you can't just reach consciousness with the mind. You can't remember who you are with the mind. It's not ever how you'll get to full remembrance. It starts in places and in subtle ways that you don't expect, like the base of the spine. And so I thank you, David, because you helped answer many questions and make it all make sense. And I want, again, for people to hear this is a valid and important practice that you can offer people. And I think it's key. It is a key, like you were saying. There's keys involved. Would you like to add anything from there?
When we're asleep, we live a normal human life. We're born, we have all kinds of energy as young children, and we grow older, and eventually we start degenerating and going downhill, and our bodies start failing, yada, yada, yada. That's it. Normal human story, blah, blah, blah. When the energy is activated within you and the life force from God, the life force of creation is flowing through you, it's always this now moment. The energy coming in is always new. It's always fresh. And over time, you discover that your body begins to regenerate. It may not be miraculous ways, like, all of a sudden I'm 50 pounds lighter and have the muscular strength of a 30-year-old, but the vitality is there because the energy is flowing through you constantly. Obviously, there are always codicils to any description, because this is never a hard, fast thing, but this is the way that it is. Because one of the things that happens when you start doing the body work, you have to release everything that is stored in the cells, and I don't care what it is, it has to come. So we recently had a coronal mass ejection from the sun that sent a large stream. It made a glancing blow to Earth, but that sends a lot of plasma, and that plasma has to come in the body, and every single cell in the body has to adjust to the frequency of it. Every stream of energy that comes in, the body has to adjust every single cell. And sometimes that's exhausting. It's not uncommon that I might wake up in the morning and go, "Sheesh, I need a nap to rest from sleep last night."
Yeah, right.
we do a lot of work at night.
Yes.
It's easier because our brains are offline.
So this leads me to maybe it seems simple, but simple questions are handy. Why is it called the Eden template?
Because Eden is what is established and realized that there may not be a reason, but this would be my reason, my reason. I was given the name when I was in Africa. I was shown it very clearly. That's what it will be called. But Eden is a primordial memory, cellular memory, if you will, of a point of paradisical perfection within the human consciousness everywhere. I don't care who you are, where you are, everybody has some kind of memory about what that is. And it's the restoration inside each one of us to the most innocent, perfect being that we actually are. It's reclaiming the innocence that all of us have. And we've never been dented, we've never been bruised, we've never been scratched or broken. It's just, it restores everything because it restores our connection to Source. Now, once the activation happens, and it's freely available, maybe not free because I do charge for it, but it's available to anybody that wishes to receive it and come and attend. And I do talk extensively about this because it's the inner process is a process of alignment, but holding that afterwards is dependent upon now the work is back on each person. So staying in that space depends upon your ability to stay congruent within the energy of your heart. If you want to attempt to put this into your brain and say, okay, this is the Eden box over here, I'm going to put it in over here, and I'm going to try and fit everything around that in that box of my belief, it's not going to work for you, because it's an opening into quantum awareness, multidimensional awareness, and you can't use your brain. It just won't work. It's like that old biblical adage, you can't put new wine into old bottles. It's not, you can't take new stuff and put it into the container of how you used to run your life. And so if you stay congruent in your heart, yes, things will begin to open up dramatically. And some people have just utterly amazing awakenings and openings. And with others, it's more slow, but it's unique to each person. What I like about it the most is that you cannot injure yourself by having this activation and this remembrance and the energy flowing through you, because it is self-governed by your consciousness. If you choose to want to go back to the way that you were, it's just going to shut it down and close it off. It's never going to completely close off, but it's going to tamp it down. And as you expand your consciousness, more and more energy will begin to flow through. So it's all self-regulating. It's not like the old stories that may be out there that people have heard.
Right. Yeah. That it's safe. It's safe. It's
Totally.
Yeah. It's not. And I.
It's a remembrance.
It's a remembrance. Exactly. And that's how I experienced it too. The depth of it. It's all familiar. It exists, and all you're doing from my perspective, all I am doing is enjoying being steeped and opened up by this arena of energy called the Eden template. And so it's like discovering a new place, a new dimension within the self that already existed there. And that way it doesn't feel like and is not an implant. It is not it's not artificial in any way. It's not something that I would normally have been willing to do at all. And I want people to know that I don't do activations. I have one teacher in a lineage that I work with, and I'm in the wake of that. But this was different. This was different. This is the first activation of its type I've ever taken part of. Most people would be very surprised to hear that, but I'm an open book. And I don't take part in anything like that. I'm not, that wasn't my path. This is not a detour. If you're already in a multidimensional experience, it's wonderful. If you're not, it's wonderful. It's useful in that it's giving you a chance to have a taste of the original energetic of light that came in while being created as human, as the Homo sapien, the most amazing creature that we have been able to become in our consciousness. There's a reason why the Homo sapien did not just evolve suddenly on the planet. I'm saying this from an anthropological point of view, real science here. I'm sitting in class and people are telling me that humans are 100,000 years old, and I know it's not true. And now since then, since I was in college, they've proven that they're much, much, much older. But with archaeology, they told us that even though Homo erectus was so successful, that erectus lived for over 1 million years, beautifully successful, that somehow, some way, out of nowhere, the Homo sapien appeared. And that's what they tell us in college. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's something missing here. That wasn't an evolution event. The evolution event was the outcome of a spiritual event called Eden, the creation of the human. And that's what I felt. That's how deep it is. By accessing this deep knowing, this ancient original memory of the beginning. And that's what I perceive about it. So again, helping people to know that this work is safe and it's there, it's available through this amazing man named David. What would you add to that, if anything?
Well, at one level, I would just say I'm a function of consciousness. And if it wasn't me, and it is me, but if it wasn't me, it would be somebody else. I mean, I just kind of want to counter it a little bit when you talk about this amazing man named David. I'm just another person. There's absolutely nothing special about me. Or if there is something that is special about me, you are that same specialness. We are literally all one. So when I greet you, I don't greet you as my beloved sister. I greet you as myself. Because you are myself. There is no point of separation that exists between you and me, or between me and anybody that I meet, wherever it is, or between any of us. It's who we are. And if there's a way that I can interact with you that expands, and right now I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about our listeners. If there's a way that I'm able to interact with you that expands your consciousness, even if it's just momentarily, I'm enthusiastically there. I know what's coming. I'm just barely beginning to be in, shall we say, the public eye. There's not that great of an awareness of the work that I do, and that's okay. It's all organic. I go where I'm invited, and
I love that. Well, I'm glad I got to invite you to this.
I've been a pusher most of my life. Is okay. I got to make this happen. No.
Yeah, hustle.
I don't get to make anything happen. I'm just along for the ride. I like to say, one of my friends says that I know everything about everything, and I do, quote unquote, know a lot of things, but those are just things.
Yeah.
I like to say that I know nothing. I spend most of my time in stillness and quiet, and when there's a movement, there's a knowingness that comes with that, and I'm usually asked to do something. The English language language itself is very difficult, because one of my favorite statements is, "Who is this I of whom you speak?" You know, we use it so ubiquitously in our daily conversations. Well, I did this, I did that. Well, who is this I of whom you speak? And if you can find a point of self-identification that says, "This is who I am," you're wrong. That's not it. So it's always curious to use a word like that, because it makes no sense energetically, because there is only the self. There is only the God self. That's it. If that's what you mean by I, well, you know how it is. If you think you're God and you're the only one, they usually lock you up in a mental institution. But if you know you're God and you also know that everybody else is, then that's a different story.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because there is nobody. I mean, there's a teaching someplace that a person crossed over and met God, and God proceeded to show them that they were every single person that had ever lived on the earth, and their consciousness just went, not understanding, because they thought it literally meant, I was that person, I was that person, I was that person, I was that person, rather than, this is all God.
Right. Yeah. That's a beautiful visual. Very good. So I'd like to finalize our conversation by inviting people to come and learn about your work. And so would you tell people where they can come learn about you, and what are some of the things you'd like to share with people that are coming up? Because you've got a lot of new, good work coming through, and I'd love for you to tell them all about it.
So you can find me at my website, which is edentemplate.com. I'm also on Facebook. You're more than welcome to send me a friend request there, although I'm there less and less just because of it's Facebook, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
So far I've been offering the Eden template once a month on the natural gateways, January 1st, February 2nd, March 3rd, etc., etc., etc. The next one coming up will be the September one on September 6th. They don't always fall right on the gateway day, but they're within the windows, the energetic windows. Next year, I literally need to do the Eden template the way that most people need to drink water, breathe air, eat food. It's sustenance for me to be able to share it. So I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. It feels like maybe I'm going to just open it up and start doing them every 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and just let whoever comes, whoever wishes to come.
Mm-hmm.
It literally doesn't matter to me if there's 5 people or if there's 500. It's still the transmission is still the same. I also offer one-on-one sessions, working with trauma release. Although I'm doing less and less of that, I'm moving into doing group sessions, and I'm still discovering what that is. I currently have a group of 42 people that we're going to do 3 sessions with, as a test group, if you will. That sounds strange to say, but sometimes we don't know what's possible until we try and see what it is. And I'm being guided to work with groups, and just as an opportunity to be able to work with more people, and especially more people affordably. I'm also, I haven't written the course yet, but it is coming, because I know I'm moving for myself a little bit more away from doing one-on-one sessions. I know there will always be a need for that kind of intimate, direct contact. And so I have a mentorship program that there are a few signees that have said they're interested, that they'll study with me for 6 months. And really and truly, when I say study, they will work on aligning themselves to the frequency that is what comes through me from the I Am presence. It's more about them aligning themselves with that frequency so that they can just as effectively do the one-on-one work. And I'm still developing the course material for this, which is my course material for a class called Freedom from the Known. So everything that we know, everything that we believe, everything we think about ourselves, that is standing in the way of our
Gotta go.
direct self-realization. And so I'm not as far along with it as I would like to be, but that's okay. When it's time, it will come forth. And you experienced this last weekend. There are innumerable traditions on the planet that have offered initiatory ways to self-realization. And it doesn't matter how grand a civilization was, whether it was Atlantis or Lemuria or Sumeria or Egypt or Incan or Mayan civilizations, or indigenous people's shamanic journeys to become a healer or a shaman for the tribe. It doesn't matter. Whatever those initiations were, they are externally, they are a mirror for the alignment in the nervous system, in the neural net within the body itself, that brings them to remembering and realizing who they are, to their awakening of themselves. I know most of those initiations because I've been through most of them, and in some cases failed. And failure in that circumstances means you died. You dropped your body and went back into non-physical. There are a lot of people on the planet right now that have experienced those initiations and did not succeed for whatever the reason, and it doesn't matter what the reason is, but they were they were unable to, when they returned, for whatever reason, to be able to come back and finish those initiations. So one of the things that I offer is a large multi-dimensional journey in initiation, which is a life and death being, to complete that circuitry. And it doesn't matter what the tradition is. It could be Egyptian or whatever, or Mayan, Incan, it does not matter. It's the completion of the circuitry. So what I've been shown is that for people that still have that, or that are experiencing it, there's like a pull to a lifetime when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a wish to return to that time frame, which is that's beside the point. That's just kind of how it expresses emotionally within someone. But that going through this process completes that circuitry, and it literally does not matter what tradition it was in, because the inner circuitry is the inner circuitry. It's like, if your house is wired wrong, it doesn't matter what appliance you plug into an outlet, it's not going to work right. And this initiation or initiatory journey completes the circuitry, and when the circuitry is completed, the energy of that lifetime comes here and merges with this timeline. So it no longer is affecting an energetic pull, if you will. Like something is wrong, something is missing, I'm lacking something, whatever it is, because you complete the circuitry, and that's part of what we're doing now, and is in the full embodiment process, because we've never done this the way that it's happened now. Historically, if somebody experienced self-realization, they dropped their body and went into non-physical as an ascended master.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing now. There have been people that have done it and stayed in the body, but not in the numbers of people. And it may not be a huge number, but it doesn't have to be a huge number, because this is a critical mass thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because quantumly, it's much bigger than what it may appear. It doesn't take 1 billion people to do this. But it does require enough people to have a major impact on the field, on the energy field. So the collective is literally running on its own momentum. That's the only thing that is sustaining the current collective vision of what's going on out there, whether it be consumerism or nationalism or whatever, what religiousism or whatever it might be. It's running on its own energy, and there's nothing sustaining it. It's like a runaway freight train, or a freight train that is moving very quickly. You don't stop it fast. And you don't just say, I want to make a right turn, a 90-degree right turn. No, you have to have long sweeping curves, because there's so much momentum with it just because of its mass. And what we're doing through the embodiment work is that we're introducing quantum change into the field, and then everybody will use it as they choose to use it, because everybody is on their own journey. So I'm very clear that I'm not a healer. I can't fix you. I can't fix anybody. That's not possible. That's saying that I know better than you, and I can override your soul path just because I think that's the right thing for you to do. No, goodness sakes, no. But by doing the work, what we do is we introduce possibilities, quantum possibilities, into the field at large, and then anybody that is ready can tap in. I am back. Yeah, probably an
Yeah, you're
internet,
back. It's okay.
probably an internet connection. So, in the same way that Rupert Sheldrake called it the morphogenetic field,
Yeah.
when we think about inventions or things on that order, so like think of the number of scientists at opposite ends of the planet that make a discovery and win a co-win a Nobel Prize for discovering or finding something at the same moment.
Yes.
And that's because the information is in the field, and
Yeah.
anybody that can tap into it can tap into it. So
Yes.
that applies for inventions, that applies for new technologies, but it also works the same way with consciousness.
How cool.
When one of us resolves an energy within ourselves, that awareness is now put into the field, and it's available to anybody that can tap into it. And what it means for me is that somebody else may not have to go through the intensity that I went through to clear something, because the energy of the clearing is there in the field, and if they can tap into it, you can integrate it. So the more that each one of us does our work, the more that is available to everybody.
Yes.
And
This is
I realized that at some point when you get me going, at some point I start to babble. So if I'm babbling,
no.
I apologize.
I would say that you're right on the money, that many other people who are doing seeing of any type on the global scale are saying the exact same thing with even the same metaphors, the freight train, the momentum, the unsustainability of it, all the same, that this seeing is a universal available knowing to anyone who wants to look at consciousness right now, and that critical mass is occurring. And if you are called to continue to work on yourself and do that self-inquiry, you're not alone. You're intimately one with the consciousness of all the people, and that's how we create change. That's how we're going to witness humankind enter into the great remembrance, and by individuals going inward and doing that work and that effort. And I want to commend anyone who is listening to this and needed a little validation that you're on the right track. Don't give up. Don't stop. And the more you heal, the more available, again, like David's saying, the more you heal, the more that healing event that you've made room for will be available to consciousness. And the more we do, the better, because then it's like opening up the library, sections of the library about how do you heal, pedophilia, rape, incest, ritual abuse. How do you heal the darkest of the dark? Well, David and myself, we've been doing that. And so it's available. It's available. And there's others who are doing it. It's available. You can do it. If we can do it, you can. And that's the glory of this, of how intimately one the consciousness is. And thank you for describing it very clearly. I think it's gives people something to envision and to feel into. And I'm so glad that you'll be doing more initiations, because it was very powerful and a great big step for me.
Nobody's more surprised than me.
Right? Me too. I do stuff. I'm like, wow, that was effective. Excellent. When you get out of the way, you're always going to stay surprised.
Absolutely. And I would add, talking about the world, that don't look to the outside world for validation of how the change is, because as much as the outside world is in chaos, which is necessary, the new is also building up from the inside out. The new earth is already here.
Yes.
It's not something that we have to create. It's already here, and it's accessible just through your vibration.
Yeah, we're making room for it.
To the frequency of your vibration.
Mhm.
So I often joke with people that I might say something like, I live in my own world, but that's okay because they know me there. And there are a lot of people that are currently no longer living in 3D.
Yeah.
There's lots of us.
Yeah.
The rules of 3D do not apply to us.
No.
And that's really how you shift, is you cannot change something by focusing your attention on it. So if you see something in the government or in racism or whatever, and you focus all of your attention on that, you're not going to change it. All you're doing is adding energy to feed it.
Yeah.
If you're in a conspiracy theory, well, all I can say is, how's that working out for you?
Yeah. It's got to come from the inside.
So it's always an inside job. So look inside yourself. If you're looking to the outside world, you're not going to find what it is that you're actually looking for.
I can help validate that in saying, and at the beginning, I was telling people about changing yourself and watching the results around you. And that is pure ego. It's pure ego in that I love to have a collection of things I know, and that is something I'm letting go, and I'm really, really enjoying not knowing anything and letting all of that go, letting go of, and this is what's slowly occurred, letting go of wanting to watch that change occur, or having any attachment to it, letting go of being a scientist, letting go of being a seer, letting go of all these I am presences, these identities.
Letting go of being Elizabeth.
And that too. Mm-hmm. And that the not knowing and you can't see your way into oneness. You can't know your way into oneness. You can't do your way into oneness.
It can only be it.
Because it was already there the whole time. You're moving out all the rest in order to find what was already there. It's the great discovery process, where we think we're creating it, but really it was all there already.
I don't remember his name, but there is an Indian saint that was asked what surprised him the most about when he finally remembered. And he laughed and said the door was always open.
Yeah.
It's literally never closed to us, because literally it is who we are.
It's magnificent. Well, thank you. Thank you for helping awaken us into our remembering, for the
Thank you
light.
Thank you for remembering on your own.
Yeah, that too. Thank everyone who listens to this for remembering, for stepping in that oneness. And I hope that everyone will be able to come enjoy working with this beautiful presence that's available within you, and getting a chance to allow it to exist, because it was already there. It's always there.
It's always there. Mm-hmm. And if on your journey you elect to work with me at some point, I will look forward to it with great joy. This is such fun work to do. It's just incredible. You know,
truly, it's very fun. Yes,
it just puts smiles on and laughter on your faces. I'll tell a short story, and then we can end. And that's about two young boys in Tibet that joined the monastery, and they went through their trainings and eventually became lamas as adult men. They were sent to opposite ends of the world to do their work, and after decades, they met again in some city, and they were sitting in a cafe on a sidewalk having something. And the conversation might go something like they would sit in silence for 5 or 10 minutes, and then they'd burst out laughing. And then they'd sit in silence again, and they'd burst out laughing again. So
There you go. That's a real conversation there.
that's
Next
how
time
a
we'll
lot.
just do that for our interview.
That's how a lot of conversations that I have with friends happen. We just sit around and laugh.
It's true. Well, and it's easy to do with you, David.
It is such a pleasure to be here with you and to be your friend and to share the gifts that I have and receive your gifts also. Every single one of us, we have codes for everybody. So I have codes for you, and I joyfully share them. You have codes for me, and I joyfully receive them, because none of us have all the pieces in terms of our awareness. I used to joke that, in some of the trauma work that I've done has worked with people has just been utterly beyond amazing, the transformations that people have had. And when I get stuck, I go, well, geez, why can't I do this for myself? Because I end up calling somebody else that I know for assistance. And the answer is very simple, so that you know that you're not alone.
And thank you for being humanity's friend. Namaste, my friend. I can't wait to have you back. And I hope everyone will come and learn more about David, and you can find out more. I'm going to make sure there's a link in the video description for all of you so you can connect with him. And we will meet again, and probably sooner than later.
And I wholeheartedly look forward to that, Elizabeth.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Bless you. Namaste.
It's been a pleasure to be here, my friend. Thank you.